for being an awesome guest, but great job to them for handling that. And I'm glad to be here with you. As I said, no guests tonight. We're going to do an open Ask Me Anything. We got a bunch of questions from Patron, which we're going to get to first. And of course, if you have questions, put them there in the chat. I'm watching myself talk to you and watching the Bell's palsy. I don't know that I'll ever get used to that. I'm not a fan of Justin Bieber's music, but I was reading a news article today. I guess he's like done touring. He has something very similar, a similar syndrome, and his is far worse than mine. But yeah, I don't know that I'll ever get used to that. But this helps. All right. While we wait for people to come in, speaking of Mary, I want to show this off. Alien, Enemy of My Enemy. This is the paperback. The ebook is on sale right now. I think the paperback is actually shipping to stores as we speak. Comics Connection in Pennsylvania got their copies early because they were the official launch for the book. But yeah, let's talk about this, okay? And we've been together 25 years, some of us. Charles, Efren, I know you've been around a long time. JB, Tom Duffy, I see you all there in chat. Been reading me a long time, right? I won't bullshit you when it comes to books. So, yes, she's my fiance. And yes, I love her and support her. But I'm telling you, as an Alien fan, as a fan of this franchise, this book kicks so much ass. It has the horror of the first film. It has the action, the military action of the second film, and it has the psychological drama of the third film. It's like all three mushed together. And if that's not enough, there's something even more deadly than the aliens. And also the moon is about to crash into the fucking planet. So the stakes are very high in that novel. It's very good. I'm very proud of her. And if you like that franchise at all, if it's been a while, or if you've never read anything from the franchise, if you only know the films, please do consider picking this one up. I think it's very worth it. Also, while we're waiting for everybody else to come in the chat, I want to remind you that this is out now in paperback and for Kindle Nook and Kobo and Apple iBooks. That is Things Left Behind by Mary and myself. That is what's paying for our honeymoon. So if you buy a copy of that, you are in fact helping us pay for our honeymoon. People have been asking, where are we going on the honeymoon? Well, we're gonna spend the first night at a very quirky hotel that we both like in Portland, Oregon. It's called McEneman's Edgefield, and I don't even know if I could describe this place. It's like Wonderland, Alice in Wonderland meets the Overlook from The Shining. It's like mash those two things together, and maybe a little bit of the White Lotus. Mash those three things together. It's a very cool hotel. We both are very fond of it. So we're spending our first night there. Next morning, we're hopping in a rental car. We're driving up to Mount Rainier in Washington State, and we're going to spend 4 days there. We're going to go to the top, up to the rim of the volcano, do some camping out and stuff. It's going to be awesome. If we survive that, if bears or cougars or Bigfoot doesn't eat us, or if the volcano doesn't explode, after 4 days, we'll come back down to the base, and we will then drive north to a town in Washington State that I can't pronounce, but it's where a lot of Twin Peaks was filmed. They used the hotel there for the Great Northern in Twin Peaks, and of course the waterfall is there and the diner is there, so that's gonna be very cool. And then the final day, not the final day, the final 2 days we're gonna spend in Seattle, see some things there, possibly see a few friends. Originally we had thought maybe we would do a signing while we were out there, but I don't think so. I think this is going to be for us. So that's the honeymoon. You buy that book, you're helping us pay for it. It's pretty much paid for. The problem is we paid for the honeymoon, and now we got to pay for the wedding. So yeah, you're helping, believe me. All right, so let's get to questions. And as I said, open mic night. As always, my patron supporters get their questions read first, and they're guaranteed to have their questions read no matter where we're at on the clock as far as time goes. So the best way to get your question read is to subscribe to the Patreon. It's $5 a month, and you get content every single day. I post 7 days a week, 365 days a year. First question comes from Henry. Henry asks, with AuthorCon 2 right around the corner, along with the honeymoon tour, out of all your signings, which was your favorite and why? That is a good question, Henry, and I've been thinking about it since I saw you post it. I don't know that I could pick just one. But the first time I signed in Ashland, Kentucky would be very close. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there's a banner up here. Spend your summer vacation with a double shot of Brian Keene. I was on tour for City of the Dead and Terminal, and at a signing in Ashland, Kentucky, at a pal who was a program director of a radio station there, a very popular radio station, right downtown, and he had me on the morning show at the station, and promoting that I was signing there that evening, and I signed at a Walden Books in their mall. And to this day, I think it might be the longest line I've ever had. I think the only other time I had a line longer was World Horror Con in Austin, Texas. The line snaked at one point, snaked all the way down the mall, and then I noticed they were wrapping it. I think it went out into the parking lot. It was very, very cool. It was the first time I had any inkling that many people were reading my books. And back then, that many people were reading my books. Not so much these days, but back then, yeah. And it was neat because, not a lot of people sign there. So it was very cool to meet, these folks who were reading my books, who I was bringing joy to, and who in turn brought me a lot of joy. And then the manager of the movie theater there, he was a fan, and he invited us to a midnight screening of a Batman movie. And I was so tired from touring that I fell asleep halfway through the movie. That's how tired I was. But it was a great time. That one is always good. I really like it anytime I talk at high schools. I enjoy talking to colleges and places like CIA headquarters, but what I really like is high schools. Because it might be hard to believe, but I was a bit of a troublemaker in high school. I was a bit of a delinquent, and I like talking to those kids specifically. I like letting them know that, hey, I didn't go to college. I didn't have the best grades. I was getting stoned under the bleachers, but I'm doing this. If I can do this, anybody can fucking do this. I put it in better terms than that, but that's the message I want to get across. So yeah, I got a lot of favorites. And sadly, I was just talking about this with a friend. All these conventions and all these signings, after 25 years, they blur together. They really do. So, I don't remember them all, but those are definitely some favorites. There used to be a convention I really enjoyed every year in St. Paul, Minneapolis area, called Convergence. And this is before any of us got anywhere. It was stand-up comedian Joe Scrimshaw, screenwriter C. Robert Cargill, myself, and some other friends of ours. And every year we'd go to that, and we would just hang out and party. And author Brian Smith used to go, and we would just have such a good time. And I miss those days. I miss being able to do that. Which always a blast there. Some of my fondest convention memories are from that con. So good question. Okay, Efren asks, howdy, Brian. Just started listening to Dead Sea on Audible. Great job by the narrator. I agree. And I wondered which of the 13 was responsible for the dead in that novel. None of them is the answer, Efren. That is a disease, Hamlin's Revenge. None of the 13 are responsible for it. But across my shared universe, you do see the disease turning up in different realities and different times. You see it in prehistoric times. You see it, of course, in Dead Sea and Entombed. There's a reason for that, which is going to be, I think, the fourth Labyrinth book that will be revealed, but it's actually none of the 13, just a disease. Catherine Dow asks, question about the business side of things, since you talked a bit lately about how hard the business is, and increasingly so. It seems like people have two options for publishing: independent, mostly totally on their own, or through a publishing company of various sizes. Are there writer-driven owned cooperatives out there right now serving the role of a publishing house? If not, is there a good reason this hasn't happened that I just don't understand? Or is it as simple as writers just really bad at collective organizing? That, Catherine, is a fantastic question. I don't think I've ever had anybody ask me that. And it's a good question. It's something authors should be thinking about. There are collectives. Sorry, my cigar went out. Now, there we go. There are collectives. Nothing mainstream, however. On the indie scene, you do see collectives. Eraserhead Press, which also incorporates Deadite Press, used to involve Lazy Fascists and several other imprints. They started as a writer collective. And there have been others. I would say that Godless, while technically a book-selling site, I would say that is, modeled after a collective. But nothing mainstream. Because, of course, mainstream, it's all about mass product, which is all about money. So, you're not going to get anything mainstream doing that. And the indie side, while there are collectives, as you said, writers are just really bad at collective organizing. There is that. People drift away, or one person ends up doing all the work for everybody else. And that's not so different than a standard publisher. And most writers are really terrible business people. That's why a lot of us have agents or managers or accountants. Now, I don't have an agent or a manager. I do have a good lawyer, and I do have an accountant, because I'm terrible with numbers. But, that's the reason why. There are also professional groups. There's the Authors Guild, the Writers Guild, the HWA, the SFWA. Not really what you're talking about, but it is a sort of collective bargaining. The HWA has accomplished some things for writers in the genre. The SFWA, of course, and the Writers Guild and the Authors Guild are pretty much the closest thing we have to a labor union. So, there is some of that. But yes, very good question. Tobias K asks, hey, Brian, in some of your books, like The Damned Highway and The Gathering of Crows, you engage with subjects of conspiracy, either mixing them into the lore or the perspective of a character. My question is, what kind of research prep helps you with these out there subjects? Now, that's part one of Tobias's question. He has a part two. Honestly, Tobias, there's not a lot of research or prep I put into with the occult stuff and the paranormal stuff and the conspiracy stuff. And that is because back when it used to be acceptable to say this, I was a conspiracy theorist. I love a great conspiracy theory. Roswell, Area 51, who shot Kennedy, old school, traditional, classic conspiracy theories. I utterly loathe what conspiracy culture has become. And I'm going to get a little political, which in and of itself might be a conspiracy. I hate that conspiracy culture has slowly been commandeered by the far right. And I loathe that everything is now sort of under this QAnon, Alex Jones, globalist bullshit conspiracy, because that's what it is. It's a bullshit conspiracy designed to get you to buy things. Okay. Alex Jones is no different than Amazon or any other company that's marketing to you. Okay. Alex Jones wants to sell you his pills, his supplements, his t-shirts, his mugs, and everybody else saw what a great fucking grift. We can put George Soros up as this boogeyman. We can name these unnamed New World Order. You notice they never name anybody in the New World Order except Soros. You know, it's the Illuminati. They control everything. Yeah, give us 5, Alex. He can't fucking do it. Okay, he can say, oh, it's Disney, it's this, it's that. You ever notice he keeps moving the target? It's a fucking shell game, and I hate that is what conspiracy culture has become. I hate that if I say, yeah, I love a good conspiracy theory, people immediately think I must be some alt-right Timothy McVeigh douchebag. I'm far from that. So, you know, I miss the days of debating who killed Kennedy. You know, I for the record, I don't believe Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, and I know people in our government that don't think he acted alone. I'm right now UFOs. Okay, last year during the pandemic, the government comes out and admits that they exist. Admits it. It's on the front page of every fucking newspaper in this country. And you know what people do? They go back to arguing politics. They go back to the right versus left bullshit. And that enrages me because for 50 years the government actually lied to us, and like people legitimately were harmed by those lies. You know, people lost their jobs, people were labeled crazy, people were kicked out of the military, fired from government positions for standing forth and saying, no, I witnessed something in the sky. And here it turns out they were telling the truth all along. Now, I'm not saying that everybody was telling the truth, but a lot of these cases that the government went ahead and declassified, or the stuff the Navy pilots have talked about, that was stuff that 4 years ago they were saying, oh, no, that's bullshit. That was swamp gas. That was this, that was that. You know, we live in the era of the Chinese balloons, right? Everybody's concerned about the fucking balloons. These things have been buzzing us for 50 years, and they've admitted that they're real. They've admitted that they don't know what they are, and everybody just says, that's what douchebags like Alex Jones have done to the culture and the conversation around conspiracies. And Tobias, you sent me down the rabbit hole of rants here, but this is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. To get back to your question, I don't have to research a lot. I've got pretty much every legit book on UFOs ever written. I've got a trove of Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and other cryptid books down there. I think one of the best books ever written about the conspiracy theory is actually by horror writer Edward Lee, Death of the Cold War Kings. It's not fiction. It's a nonfiction book because Lee is also into these things. So yeah, I don't have to research a lot. My struggle with Invisible Monsters was actually to not overwhelm the reader with conspiracy lore. So that was part 1 of your question. Part 2 was also, do you possibly have any updates on the audiobook of Submerged? Unfortunately, I don't. Scott Weinberg, who narrated the first book, he lobbied to do the second one. I know that, you know, during the pandemic, Scott was going through a lot of stuff, and I'm not going to share that on the air. It's his business, but I told him, you know, take your time. Family comes first. You come first. I know that as we're now, almost 3 months into the new year, I haven't checked in with Scott. I probably should. I'd like to see where he is on that. If he still wants to do it, great. And if he doesn't, then, you know, we'll get somebody else to do it. Wait, you said, yeah, Submerged is the second Labyrinth book. I've written so many goddamn books, I can't keep them straight. Deluge is the second Earthworm Gods book. I swear it's just tobacco. Yeah, audiobook is Submerged. That's in production, but I don't have any updates on that either. But there you got a bonus question. I haven't been drinking, and I swear there's nothing in this cigar. But yeah, wow. That's bad, Brian. Keep your book straight. All right. Anne Marble asks, are you aware of the growing monster romance genre where writers use cryptids, monsters, and aliens as romantic heroes? I read one with a spider-like alien hero. If so, have you considered writing a cryptid romance under a pen name? I am aware of it. In fact, if you go back here on YouTube, go back through the Horror Show at Brian Keene archives. I think Christian Jensen's very last appearance on the show, I think it was his 5th or 6th appearance. We talk at length about that because Christian was making a lot of money at the time writing what Dave and I were calling Bigfoot porn, which was, in fact, these monster romances. Yeah, I'm aware of it. I won't judge any writer who's doing that. I don't kink shame, if people enjoy reading that, more power to them. At least they're reading it. If an author can make a living writing that, more power to that author. But it's not for me. It's not something I want to write. But good on those who can. So, all right, that does it for Patreon. Now we will get to your questions. Type them in the chat. I see a few popping up. Give me one second. I had the windows open for the cigar. I want to shut this one because it's getting a little chilly. All right, so let's see what we got here. All right. Lots of hellos. 25 years. Yes. Eddie has not been reading the newsletter. Have you, Eddie? Wrote an essay in not last week's, but the week before, 2 weeks ago, about how the Rising turned 20 this year, and I didn't even realize it. The group doing the video game actually reminded me that it was the 20th anniversary, and the same day they did, someone on Twitter reminded me of that. Yeah, so the Rising's 20 years old. I sold my first short story in 1997, so it might be. See, I told you I suck at math, Catherine. This is why I have an accountant. Let's do the math here. This is 2023 minus 1997. 26 years, Eddie. I've been doing this 26 years. Wes Southard started reading Alien yesterday, Alien, Enemy of My Enemy, and loves it. JB, his son picked up one at the signing halfway through the Alien book and said it's great, best book in the franchise. Again, we are talking about Mary Sangiovanni's Alien, Enemy of My Enemy. The Kindle version is available right now. I believe the audiobook version is available. The paperback, I think, ships to stores next week. So let's see what else here. Lots of love for Things Left Behind. Thank you, Noige. I appreciate that. Well, we hope you can make it next year, Eddie. Here we go. This will be my first time attending a Stoker's. Is it like cons, conventions, in that I can bring books to have signed if I buy books, or is it not okay to do that there? This is a good question. Stoker Con is not a fan convention, okay? They haven't always advertised that. In fact, I'm wearing a World Horror Convention hoodie. World Horror Convention and Stoker Con, they're not fan conventions. It's not where you show up and there's a vendor room with 500 vendors selling everything from t-shirts to stickers to books. There is a vendor's room, but it's small. There aren't actors from horror movie franchises. It is strictly authors, and it is more of a trade show. It's a place where authors, agents, book designers, editors, artists, etc., are getting together to network and, hear news and updates and things that impact them. That being said, it is a great place for fans to get books signed. Because unlike a fan convention, those authors aren't stuck behind the table all day. You know what I mean? They're doing panels, they're doing programming, they're doing readings. There is a mass signing one night of the convention. And it usually runs like 2 to 4 hours. And, you can load your wagon or your wheelbarrow up with books and just go from table to table to table and get everything signed. And the beauty of it is you don't have to buy books. Okay. You can bring books from home, get them signed, and everybody's cool with that. They're not, sure, if they have a book on their table that you don't own, do your author a favor, buy the book. But it's not expected of you. Okay. They're not going to charge you money to sign those books. So yeah, you get to see your favorite authors in sort of a different setting. The panels are really excellent. I don't know if they will appeal to general readers. StokerCon usually does have a track of programming for readers. I'm thinking more along the lines of the way World Horror used to be. Yeah, StokerCon, there are some reader events, and they have like librarian events, and so there's different tracks of programming. I think you'll have a good time, though, is the bottom line. And yes, bring books from home, get them signed. Everybody's going to be okay with that. So Eddie says, the first Hypericon still holds a special place in my heart. That was a great convention. I don't remember if that was the one where the locals in town there in Nashville were trying to do karaoke and we took over their karaoke bar. I don't remember if it was that one, Eddie, but that was a legendary night. All right, Candace Nola, question: will the Writers' Workshop continue to be held prior to AuthorCon if those continue to be held? That's a great question. Answer is I don't know yet. As I've been telling folks, this is the first year Mary and I are doing this. We expect to make lots of mistakes. I know we're going to make lots of mistakes. This is a practice run for us. When it's over, we'll sit down just like we do with other Scares of Care events. We'll sit down with the board of directors and we'll unpack everything in the boardroom and we'll say, here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. Do we want to do it again? If so, what can we do to improve it? It makes sense to me to have it before, but it also makes sense to me to separate the two and do them as two separate events. So I'm just not sure how that's going to work yet. But I'll know after AuthorCon and after the workshop is over. When will the scholarships be announced for the Writers' Workshop? I believe Sonora contacted the two folks today. I don't know if it was announced publicly, but I believe she emailed the two people. So I think we have to wait until we get confirmation from them before we announce it publicly. Eddie, I'm sorry to hear that you're sick. I agree with Charles there. I hope it passes quickly. Blue popping in to say hi. Okay, well, Blue, I hope we see you down south as well. All right. Alex Jones is a wingnut. Solidarity, I agree. John Hale, yes, we are talking about Alex Jones. Well, we were. All right. I know I saw questions here. Where do you plan to take the Clicker series over the next 2 to 5 years? That's up to the folks writing it. Fuck it, Candace. Let's tell people you and Leslie Connor are going to do one together. So I don't know. Where are the two of you planning on taking it? I know that Jay Wilburn and Christopher Ruffty were working on theirs before Jay died. Chris is finishing it right now. In fact, I suspect we'll probably see a manuscript at some point this year. I have no idea what the plot is, no idea where they're taking it. That's what the estate and I wanted to happen. We wanted other authors to take it over and make it their own. And I know I said I would never write another Clickers book without Jesus, but Brian Smith hit me with a pitch and it's brilliant. And Jesus would have loved it. So Brian Smith and I are going to do one too. It's called Clicker 666. That's the working title. I know where that one is going, but I don't know what anyone else is doing, and that's the beauty of it. I wait to be surprised, just like the readers. You'll have to let me know what forum that is, Tom. There's one that I do troll mercilessly. It's full of just the people we were talking about earlier, the really far right QAnon people, and I love to go on there and troll them. I've convinced them that I was posting from inside Area 51. I've convinced them of all kinds of things. It's delightful. Charles wants to know where Dallas is. I don't know. He's around here somewhere. Daddy's been smoking a cigar, so they don't stay up here when I'm doing that. Here we go. Regina, have you ever pulled an all-nighter working on a project? And if so, what did you do to stay up? Yes. You can't see them, but over there are the 4 books in the Hail Satan series. When I was younger, I used to pull all-nighters all the time, especially if a novel was due. And what did I do to stay up? Coffee, and honestly, just the excitement and the energy of writing that story, of telling that story, of getting it out. And I'll be very honest with you, Regina, that's not something I have at age 55. I can't do that anymore. I'm tired now just doing this live stream. You see the bells is getting worse as we go on. I'll crash after this is over. I can't do all-nighters anymore. Mary does all-nighters almost every night. She works through the night while I sleep, as does my pal David Scow. And Dave is 10 years older than me, still pulling all-nighters. I can't do that. But yeah, when it was, I'd love to sit here and say huge mounds of cocaine. That's it wasn't. It was coffee and just the excitement of writing, of having that story to tell and wanting to get it out, not wanting to go to bed because I wanted to see what was going to happen next, My question is, how the hell are you? I'm good. I'm very limited on what I could say, but Christopher Golden and I got some good news today. The biggest news of either of our careers as far as writing goes. That's all I can say about that for now. So it was a good day, but also I'm engaged to the love of my life, and we're about to get married in 3 months, and things are awesome. My kids are healthy. That's all I want. People still seem to be enjoying these books. Nobody's canceled me yet. Life is good. How the hell are you? Are y'all planning at being at KillerCon this year? I will be. Mary will not be. But yeah, I will be there. She has another event in northern Pennsylvania that same weekend, so she's going to do that, and I'm going to go to KillerCon. Laurel Hightower, who we were just talking about at the start of the show, she will be my guest next week, next Wednesday night. So you all should tune in for that, definitely. Aaron asks, what jobs did you hold before you were a writer? I'm a refinery operator, blue collar, weak mind, strong back. Great question, Aaron. I wrote about this in the newsletter 2 weeks ago, the essay about the rising turning 20 years old. I knew from the age of 8 that I wanted to be a writer. I knew it. But I grew up in the 1970s in blue collar rural Pennsylvania. No idea how to make that happen. So, I didn't do good in high school. College was not going to be a possibility for me. I did 4 years in the Navy and I got out, and I worked in a foundry. My dad had worked his entire life in a paper mill. I worked in a foundry, and I thought that would pretty much be life. My first ex-wife at the time, she brings home this word processor from Sears, and I start typing stories on it, start submitting them, not getting anywhere. I wrote a bunch of terrible novels, didn't get anywhere with them. got divorced, lost everything except that word processor. And a few years later, my buddies who ran the comic store, same comic store Mary and I signed at last weekend, they had a guest come in to do a signing. This guy Joe Lansdale, who I knew. I was a huge Lansdale fan, and it was like that signing in Kentucky that I was talking about earlier. Nobody ever came to York, Pennsylvania to sign, but Joe friggin' Lansdale is signing. You goddamn right I'm going. And I showed up covered in foundry dirt, and Joe remembers this. He and I have talked about it. He remembers it. I waited patiently in line until everybody else was gone, and I bought a comic book. I had him sign it, and then I said, look, I want to do this. Help me. Tell me what I need to do. And bless his heart, he took 20, 30 minutes and told me everything I needed to know about how to become a writer. And what I didn't know at the time, Joe came from those same roots, from that same soil. He worked in an aluminum chair factory. All the jobs that Hap and Leonard do, Joe did those jobs at one point or another in his life. So yeah, I worked in a foundry. I drove truck, both box truck and rig CDL. I was a disc jockey, both like parties and dances and also on radio. I sold everything from cars to life insurance to home electronics. I was a retail store manager. I was a daycare instructor. I was a janitor. The last job, I was a telemarketer, and actually I was a really good telemarketer. The last job I had before I went full-time as a writer, I worked on the loading docks for FedEx. Basically what the characters are doing in Kill Whitey. That was my last real job. Every one of those jobs, none of them were something I was passionate about. I was good at some of them. I did enjoy DJing. If I wasn't doing this for a living, I'd probably be DJing. I was really good at sales, but I hated sales. I hated selling to people. But I was good at it. So it was a way of paying the bills. But every one of those things was just that. They were a way to pay the bills until I could make it as a writer. So that's the soil I come from. People often talk about the blue collar characters I write, the rural characters I write. Well, you write what you know, right? That's what I know. It's where I came from. My grandfather was a moonshiner in West Virginia, in Lewisburg. My grandfather before him was a sheriff in West Virginia in Greenbank. My father was the first person in our family to ever go to college, and he did it through Vietnam. He got to take advantage of the GI Bill. It's what I know. That's who I know. That's the life I know, and that's why I write about it. So I hope that answers your question. Good question. All right, let's see who else here. Zach says, I'm a huge fan. I just got extremely lucky and got a signed copy of Richard Lehman's A Writer's Tale on the secondary market based on your recommendation. And you're right, it's easily the best book. Zach, I agree with you. Love Richard Lehman or hate Richard Lehman. And look, I'm not going to front. I love Dick Lehman. I would not be here. We talked about Joe Lansdale a moment ago. Someone else that helped me immensely was Richard Lehman. The Rising would have never got published without Dick Lehman's help. I love Dick Lehman. But I also acknowledge that in 2023, some of Dick's books are problematic to some readers, to younger readers. I understand why. Okay, I'm not making fun of those people. But me personally, I love Dick Lehman and I love his books. But love him or hate him, if you're a writer, there is not a better book for writers than A Writer's Tale. And I desperately, desperately wish it was more easily available. I bet you paid a pretty penny for it on the secondary market. Matt Wilson. Matt, we were talking about Alex Jones earlier. I don't know if you were on the chat then or not, but we need your voice. Let's see what else here. What time is it? Okay, yeah, we got time for many, many more questions. This is what you're tuning in for, to watch me silently scroll through the comments. Tom says, I do early morning writing because I want my nights to be for reading. That's a great way of doing it. I do my reading in the tub these days mostly. Are you making maximum overdrive too? Okay, here we go. Here's some more questions. What part of the process of making a book happen do you find the most satisfying now? That's a good question. Boy, that's a really good question. You know, honestly, it's probably right now, Regina, it's probably not my books. Today, I put out a new edition of J.F. Gonzalez's Shapeshifter, and I get more satisfaction and joy out of that than I do releasing anything by me. I miss my friend terribly. Another author who I'm not going to name because I don't know if I have his permission or not. He and I were talking about grief this week. He lost his wife, and you know, I was talking about how grief is just the strange thing. I've had a lot of friends die over the last decade. Jack Ketchum, Dave Barnett, Gak, Dave Thomas, Tom Piccirilli. Some of them have died. Jay Wilburn, some of them have died more recently than Jesus Gonzalez, but Jesus is the one I can't get over it. And every time I think I am, I'm not. And I don't know why that is. And my therapist is no help. If she's watching this, I'm sorry. I don't know why it is. Can't get to the bottom of it. But I get a lot of satisfaction out of making sure that he is remembered. A writer, if we're remembered, if people are still reading our books, that is a form of immortality that very few others can ever achieve. And I love that, some years later now, there are new readers discovering him. I love that he's getting credit, for being one of the first brown horror writers to really achieve something, and to have inspired a whole generation of Latinx writers in the genre. I love that he's finally getting props from academia, because the one thing Jesus always wanted, he wanted academia to notice him. He wanted his shit in a university, to be studied by generations. And now he's going to have that later this year. And that makes me very happy. So it's not my books these days. Look, I'm speaking from a place of enormous privilege. I've had a great career. I've been on the bestseller lists. I've got to travel the world. I've met people who I would have never met, thanks to this. I've got readers who are politicians and porn stars and actors and stand-up comedians and scientists. And I've had a very cool run. And what I take a lot of joy in now is watching people that I've come up with starting to get their moment. Paul Tremblay is a great example. Paul started writing the same time as me. And, for years, nobody was reading Paul. And now everybody's reading Paul. And that makes me happy. Mary, I'm not going to give away details, but she's got her first movie deal happening. And she's so excited. She's so giddy. And it makes me happy for her. Plus, it makes me happy for the filmmaker because the filmmaker is hugely fucking talented, and I think he's got the right property here, and I think it's gonna elevate them both. So these are the kind of things that I enjoy now. You know, that's the part of the process that brings me the most joy, that brings me the most satisfaction, and it's nothing to do with any of my books. If you want me to directly answer your question, I am having a lot of fun with the Labyrinth series. Those are just damn fun to write. Tony Genova is my Mary Sue. I make no secret about that. And I say a lot of things through that character that I can't say in real life. So I'm having a lot of fun with those. But yeah, I'm having a good time. That's the most satisfying part. I've gotten to the point where I can relax a little bit and just have fun. And there is something to be said for that, because you start in this business having fun. And if it does become a business for you, at some point it stops being fun. It really does. But if you stick with it long enough, it gets to be fun again. Let's see here. Agree with that. Absolutely. What have you been reading or looking forward to read? Eddie, I know you're not reading the newsletter now. Busted. Because every Sunday I say what I'm reading. Currently, Saga Press, they redid all of Michael Moorcock's Elric novels and short stories and everything, collected them all, 4 really beautiful trade hardcover editions with the author's preferred text. Everything's in order, chronological order. So I've been working my way back through those. I haven't read those since I was probably 17, 18 years old. So they've been a joy to revisit. And next week, I will reread The Stand for probably the 30th time. I reread it once a year. So like the 30th time, maybe. Is there a job you haven't tried that you would like to, just for a day? No, not really. I would love to go to Florida and hunt those big fucking snakes out in the swamp, but that's not really like a job. That's just like deer hunting, except you're snake hunting. But I would like to do that. Dungeon Master grows up to be a successful author. His publisher comes to him and says, "We want you to write a sequel to one of your dad's novels. Your choice. What advice do you give him?" Well, the first part of that is true. As I've said in the newsletter, he is on the path. We were just talking about this today. He knows that he wants to be a writer. What he's struggling with is what to do for a day job. He was thinking he wanted to be a teacher. Now he's thinking, I don't know. Then he thought maybe he would go into corporate investigation. So I let him talk to a few friends of mine who work in that field. And I don't know. Today it was he wants to be a stand-up comic. So that'll be his day job. And then writing, will be. And I'm going to have him sit down with some of my stand-up comic buddies and explain to him that he'll need a third job. But there's no doubt in my mind that the scenario you pitch here could very well happen. What advice do I give him? Probably the same advice I give him now. Forget who your dad is. Be yourself. I have a lot of friends whose fathers are famous authors. I have a lot of friends whose fathers or mothers are famous authors, and those friends became authors. I have a lot of friends whose parents are famous actors, and those friends became actors. So I think I'm intimately familiar with their struggles and what they go through. And when little man first started genuinely expressing this desire, the first thing I did was talk to some of those people and find out what to do, and more importantly, what not to do. So I would tell him the same thing I've told him from day one. Forget who your father is. Be yourself. Write for yourself. Don't write what you think I want to read. Write what you want to read. That's what I'd tell him. I think if he had his way, the sequel would be to kill Whitey. I think he's probably already writing a sequel to Kill Whitey. That seems to be his favorite so far of my stuff that he's read. Glad I could help, Aaron. I don't agree on Lehman. He spoke from his heart. Right, wrong, or disgusting. That's what it's all about. I agree. I think what it comes down to for the younger generation is some of Dick's language, which was of its time, and I'm not talking like Lovecraft or Edward Lucas White. I'm not talking like blatant racism, but some of his language was socially acceptable for the time. Probably not so much in 2023, and he sort of wrote from the male gaze sometimes. Well, he did, but that was the character. That wasn't Dick. Dick himself was a married man with a daughter. I know what Dick thought of women. He elevated women. But his characters. But that's the thing. People conflate the actions of fictional characters with the real people, and we all know that's just not the way it is. But what I meant by that earlier is I understand why some younger readers can find Dick's work problematic. And they probably react the same to Ketchum. They probably react the same way to Jesus. They would probably react the same way to some of my older stuff. In fact, I know they do. I've fielded some of those questions over the years. But I think as long as we can continue to have conversations like this, they begin to see, oh, okay. And and we try to be empathetic to their point of view and understand that people continue to grow even as they get older. If you don't, well, we all see what happens. We saw it last month. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I think it's episode 4 or 5 of this very show, when we had Chris Golden on and we talked about that very thing. What happens if you don't continue to grow as you get older? Yes, absolutely. $200. You know what, Zach? Actually, that's a good price. I've seen those things go for $400 to $600 at times. That's a really good price. Good question, Jared. And Jared, good to see you. This is a great example of what I was talking about. I have known Jared since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. I remember when Jared and Jonathan Wrighton and Robert Swartwood and Brian Freeman were these 4 little kids that would come to cons, that come to World Horror Con, and look how cute. They're going to be writers. And Swartwood, USA Today bestseller list. Brian Freeman, phenomenal success. Jared, maybe you haven't heard of Jared, but you will eventually. He's going to be the Paul Tremblay of that group. Maybe the same with Jonathan Wrighton. But good to see you, my friend. Shapeshifter is out again. When can readers expect a Brian Keene werewolf novel? I get this all the time, and I don't have an idea. I would love to write a werewolf novel, but I don't have anything. When I reach into the idea bank, there's nothing there that hasn't been done before, and it hasn't been done better than what I could do. But when I get an idea, I'll do it. Stern killed it today with the Kiss interview this morning. Haven't heard him in a decade or more. Your thoughts? I didn't listen to Stern today. I'll probably listen to the replay either tonight as I'm going to sleep or tomorrow. I don't get to. It depends on what I'm doing during the workday, whether I listen to Howard or not. For what I was doing today, which involved a lot of being on the phone with Christopher Golden and other people, I couldn't have Howard on in the background, but I still enjoy the show. I do think he's probably in danger of becoming his greatest fear, which was Imus. In those, I was never an Imus fan, but my God, in those last years, Imus was unlistenable. He was a caricature of himself, and I think Stern is in danger of becoming that. but I don't think he's there yet. When it comes to interviews, he's still the king. I will go to my grave arguing there has never been a better interviewer than Howard Stern. Love him or hate him, like Dick Lehman, love him or hate him, no one's better than Howard Stern when it comes to interviewing. If you enjoyed the horror show with Brian Keene, if you enjoyed Brian Keene Live when we're doing interviews, all I'm doing is Howard Stern's technique, and that's making it a conversation, and trying to get people to reveal themselves. That he's a master at it. So no, I haven't listened yet, but I'm looking forward to it. Yes, Survivor. There are 3 books that need to be reprinted. Survivor and the prequel, Monsters and Animals, which Wrath James White finished. Those both went out of press from Deadite Press at the start of this year. They'll both be back in print this year. Survivor's up next. And then there's one other book that's been out of print for a long time called Conversion. That was Jesus's vampire novel. That'll be out at the end of this year. And then that's it for novels. There's still a lot of short story collections to do. There are 2 nonfiction collections. In fact, Shadows in the Attic will be out this year from Apocrypha. But yeah, Survivor coming up very, very, very soon. I rarely reread books, but I've been slow reading lately and need something fast and fun that ain't going to let me down. Which of yours should I reread? With teeth. Or you could read Nemesis by you and I, because aren't we supposed to be working on a sequel to that, John? No, I'd say With Teeth. To put my dad's mind at ease, he thinks Lehman was a perv in real life. How was the man himself? What was he like? And what was his opinion on the things he wrote about? Why did he write about it? I mean, Dick Lehman was the sweetest guy. He was, I never saw him be nothing but kind to anyone. He was kind to his peers. He was particularly kind to up-and-coming young writers. He was kind to the wait staff at the restaurant. He was kind to the bellhop at the hotel. He was kind to the taxi drivers. He was kind. He had a great sense of humor. He cared about the world. He cared about this country. He had zero tolerance for fools. He was a kind, loving guy. He was a wonderful father, a wonderful husband. He was a good friend. Why did he write about the stuff he wrote about? Why do any of us write about the stuff we write about? I mean, my novel Castaways or Dark Hollow, they're rape monster novels. Doesn't mean I endorse rape. Dark Hollow, I've talked about this in the horror show. It was me dealing with the fact that my wife at the time and I couldn't conceive. We couldn't conceive, and psychologically, it made me wonder what was wrong with me. What's wrong with me as a man that this isn't happening? And I wrote a novel about a rape monster satyr to deal with that and get that poison out of my system, out of my subconscious. Dick wrote novels to entertain people, and he and Ketchum and Lee figured out early on that there was mainstream horror and there was splatterpunk, and they could do something in between the two. And they didn't call it extreme horror at the time, but of course that's what it turned into. He wrote Quake because he lived in LA during that famous earthquake, and he got the idea for the novel as he was trying to get home to his wife and daughter. Where do we get our ideas, and what do we write about that? He wrote about this stuff for the same reason I'm writing about it, for the same reason Candace and Laurel Hightower and Chad are writing about it, for the same reason Stephen King is writing about it. That's where our muse leads us. So yeah, you can tell your dad, no, he was not a perv in real life. He liked good cigars. He liked, Dick Lehman was a guy that when I was still a fan, okay, I hadn't sold my first novel. I hadn't done anything like that. I hadn't even sold my first book. But I was having a party at my apartment in Baltimore, and I had posted about it on a message board that we all used to hang out on because it's very early days of the internet. And Dick Lehman saw, and he and his wife happened to be on the East Coast for vacation, and he said, "Can I come by and can I tell Edward Lee about your party?" And I'm a fan. Okay, I am a fucking kid. He shows up, and while I was out at the store, he signed every single one of my books that he had. Him and Ed Lee went through my library, pulled out every copy of their books and signed them. And Lee wrote some vile, funny, pornographic shit. Dick signed them very thoughtfully and very earnestly. That tells you who the man is. And I didn't know about it until later. Weeks after they'd left, I pulled one off the shelf and I'm like, holy shit. So yeah, that's who the man was. All right, it's 9 o'clock. We're going to go into overtime. Last call for questions. Put them in the chat. I'm going to get to all of them here. But yeah, last call for questions. Is there a hypothetical publishing experience that, if it happened, would overwhelm you? Yeah. I thought so. But as I said earlier, Chris Golden and I had something happen today that I won't talk about. I can't talk about it. It's very good news. If you had told me a week ago this was going to happen, I would have thought, no, I'm going to have to say no to that. That'll never happen. But now it has. I thought I'd be overwhelmed by it, but instead I went into work mode in my head already. As far as a bad publishing experience, no. I've had every single one of them thrown at me, and one hasn't overwhelmed me yet. I would very much like it if people who I thought were okay, people who I trusted and thought were good people, quit turning out to be shitbags. But other than that, no, I can't think of anything that would overwhelm me. Absolutely. Yeah. Great people. Steak is my favorite. The Lake is my least favorite. Yes, The Lake was published posthumously. I'm not sure what I can say about it publicly or not, but it was a first draft. I don't think he had time to. Well, obviously he didn't have time. He was dead. He didn't have time to go back and revise it. Collaborating on writing a novel, be it 50-50 writing or a ghostwriter to someone who comes up with the story. I've got an essay about it on Patreon. And I'm not blowing off the question, Eddie, but man, that's like a half an hour answer. 50-50, it depends on your writing partner. Every collaboration is different. With Jesus and with Brian Smith, literally, we didn't plot anything. We just start writing, and we would stop in mid-sentence, and the other one would pick it up and run with it. Because the three of us think very much alike, and our writing style is very similar. With Stephen Shrewsbury, who I've done 3 books and a short story, 2 short stories with, he and I found that what works best for us is he writes the entire first draft. Then I go back through and rip parts out and put parts in and massage it, and I do the second and third draft. With every writing partner I've had, it's very different. With Mary, we plotted everything out intricately before we wrote word 1, because that's how she wanted to do it. You have to be respectful of your writing partner. You have to understand that a collaboration is just that, a collaboration, and it has to be like that. Ghostwriter to someone who comes up with a story. A lot of people are ghostwriting right now in our industry because that's one way to make money right now, with the economy being the way it is. with ghostwriting, it's work for hire. You can't be married to it. It's not your idea. Um, it's the writing equivalent of going into the foundry every day. Go in, do your job, type the amount of words you need to type to get paid, and don't invest yourself emotionally in it. You can't. That way lies madness if you're ghostwriting. But there's no shame in ghostwriting. I've done my share of ghostwriting. Jesus did a ton of ghostwriting. I have friends right now that are doing a lot of ghostwriting. There's no shame in that. Let's see here. Paul, yep, Paul, you knew them very well. Dick and his family were awesome. Any advice for a father with a newborn that will soon be balancing the roles of Mr. Mom and writer once his wife returns to work? Yeah, it's the same advice I gave Wes Southard. For 4 years, you're going to have to make time to write. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. When my youngest was born, his mom, we took 6 weeks off, and she had to go back to work. Now, luckily, she worked from home. We both worked from home. So she would work during the day. And we'd have my mom come over and watch him. Why wasn't I watching him during the day? Because I would watch him all night so that she could get her sleep. When did I write? Well, I had to make time to write. I had to, if I could get him to lay down for half an hour, I got a half an hour's work in. If, I got up a half an hour early, I got a half an hour's work in. I had to make time to write, and that's what you're going to have to do. You're not going to be able to have a schedule unless you are independently wealthy and can afford a fucking nanny. You're going to have to make the time when you can get the time. Basically, if you get free time, you can nap or you can write. But at the end of those 4 years, the kid can entertain themselves, and you can put them down on the floor, and it gets easier. It does get easier. Joe Lansdale likes to tell the story of he had Keith balanced on his knee and Casey was on the floor, and he was typing with one finger. I've done that. I've had little man on my knee typing with one finger. His mom has a great photo of when he's about 2 years old, and he has this little Fisher-Price typewriter or laptop, and he's sitting next to me at the table, and I've got my laptop, and he's got his laptop, and we're both writing. You will find the time, but just don't make any grand plans for 4 years. And I'll tell you this, don't put the writing before that kid. It's an easy trap to fall into. Now, of course, we all say, oh, I would never do that. I'm a good parent. But it's an easy trap to fall into, particularly if you're really excited about what you're working on. They grow up fast. And I know we all hear that, but it is so true. They grow up fast. And, when they're that age, those are magic years, and you don't want to miss it. How do you balance? You find the balance that works for you. You find the balance that you're happy with, and you don't make excuses for it to anybody. As long as it works for you. Top 3 books you would like to see made into a movie of mine or just in general? I guess you mean mine. Let's look over here at the shelves. Kill Whitey, I think, would make a great movie. I'm trying not to mention anything that's under option right now. So, yeah, Kill Whitey would be great. Clickers would be a really fun series. I don't know that it would work as a movie. I think it would need to be a series. And The Lost Level, I think, would be a lot of fun, although it's not what people expect from me. And yeah, there's probably some there you're saying, why didn't he mention this? Well, it's probably under option right now. By the way, love Castaways. Can definitely see the layman in that book along with the Green's jet ski. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a perv, but that's my layman tribute. Castaways. Obviously, I'm not a rape monster running around a tropical jungle island. Um, I think Nora Roberts joked about using duct tape when her kids were young. Yeah, you know. Um, always be ready to pivot too. Their routine changes, change with it. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely that. So, all right. Well, that looks like it's it. So I appreciate it, gang. Like I said, next week, Laurel Hightower is our guest. She's somebody I wanted to have on the horror show. We never got the chance, so we're going to have her on here. I have a ton of questions. I hope you have some questions for her too. As always, I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out. 25, 26 years on, I still appreciate each and every one of you. I hope we've got another 26 years together. We'll see what happens. Scares of Care AuthorCon 2 charity event coming up March 31st through April 2nd in Williamsburg, Virginia. Go to scaresthatcare.org/AuthorCon. If you can join us, we hope you will. It's going to be huge. Basically, every author who you enjoy is going to be there. If you can only do one con this year, do that one. So anyway, we will see you next week. Peace out.